Hey folks, welcome back to the Western Southerner YouTube channel. So this is a video today about all you people that got river permits on February the 14th on Valentine's Day. So in the past 10 years, I've been on like 9 multi-day Western river trips, 7 of which I planned. And then I've done a whole bunch of like smaller kind of river trips, multi-day stuff that's lesser known, that you don't need to get a permit for. Okay, let's get started. Number one, just a couple safety pieces. Always make sure you got your PFD on and your crew's got your PFD on. Probably should carry a satellite communicator. Dehydration, super prevalent on the river trip, so make sure people stay hydrated. And always rig your boat to flip. If you've never been on a trip, don't worry. Flipping a boat doesn't happen very often, but you rig to flip just as a precautionary measure in case something catastrophic happens. Okay, so number two, there's always like a guidebook for a river. These are called river maps. This guy, Dwayne Wittes, comes up with these. I really like these books. If you're going to do a Middle Fork or Main trip, this is a great book to have. This one's for Desolation Canyon on the Green River. So this is another guidebook. This is written by a guy named Matthew Lydecker. He does a lot of really specialized books. This is the Middle Fork book. There's several different editions. Make sure you get the latest edition. Maybe if you're going to run the Owyhee River, you get a guidebook from the BLM. It's not as detailed as like Matt Lydecker or Dwayne Wittes' work, but the BLM books are still pretty helpful. The guidebook for the Upper Salmon, a lot of great stretches to float that don't require a permit. Make sure you get a guidebook. You want to get those as soon as possible. Okay, so number three. So when you're doing a Western float, you can bring your own boat. That's one option. But there's also a whole bunch of places that you can rent rafts from out west and then take them on a multi-day trip. They're usually like $150 to $250 a day, give or take. A lot of times they'll outfit you with all the things you need. And the Forest Service requires some kind of special things like a fire pit and a strainer and an ash can and a toilet system. A lot of times these rental places will give you everything you need. So maybe you've got a friend that drew a permit and you're thinking, well, I don't have a raft. Well, talk to them and figure out how they're going to get boats because there's all these places where you can rent boats from. If you're going to do a float here in Idaho, like on the Middle Fork or the Main Salmon or even the Selway, there's Blackadar Boating. I've used them a bunch of times, rented a lot of boats and gear from them, and they're great. The guy that runs the operations named Jerry is super helpful, so I would use them. I've also rented boats in Utah. I can't remember the names of the places I used. So in addition to renting boats, there's also places that pack food for you and like rent you coolers and things like that. Oftentimes, if you talk to a boat rental place, they're kind of in cahoots with the place that does food packing, or maybe they do it themselves. The main thing to know there is that, you want to use block ice, right? Not the bag ice with the small pieces. You want to use the block ice. And you've got to manage your cooler really well because if you're out in the summer for 5 or 6 days, maybe 8 days, they have to manage that cooler very well, make sure the ice doesn't melt. You got to drain the water, make sure there's like a ½ inch of water in the bottom, be really thoughtful. Again, if you're in Idaho doing like a Middle Fork or a Main trip, I use a company called Salmon River Food Packs. A woman named Brienne runs it. She's great. I've used her 4 or 5, maybe 6 times now. So, okay, number 5. So a river trip is a working trip, right? It's not like you're sitting back, totally relaxed the whole time. You're going to have to move around. You're going to have to carry some heavy stuff up onto the shore. You might have to help get, push a raft off of some low water on a rock somewhere. So it's a working trip. And a lot of times when I've done these trips, some people are surprised by that. Okay, number 6, water and climate. So here's how Western rivers work. Okay, so it snows a bunch in the wintertime. And then when spring rolls around, that snow starts to melt. Rivers get high in the early summer, and then they slowly and gradually back off as the summer goes on. Usually in August and September, the water levels are pretty low. When you're in the backcountry out west, though, even if it's August, you want to bring like a warm jacket. When I do a river trip in late summer, I always end up wearing my down jacket at least a couple mornings or a couple evenings during the trip because it ends up getting chilly. So make sure you bring a warm jacket. The other thing is make sure you wear rain gear. It's probably not going to rain, but if it does, it's going to rain really hard and it might rain all day. Another thing to consider too on these trips is that when the late summer comes, a lot of times that's when the fire season is at its highest. And so you can end up with some really smoky air on some of these trips. We did a trip on the Main Salmon in 2020, and it was really smoky for the first 4 days. And then the 5th day, it just dumped rain all day. And then the last day, the 6th day, when we got off the water, it was just a total bluebird, beautiful blue sky day. Sometimes that happens. It was still a great trip, and we still remember it fondly. Okay, so number 7, last but not least, this is just a little pointer for trip leaders out there. You may know this already, or maybe it's something you've thought about. First thing is always have a chore chart. There's so many jobs that need to happen. People got to cook, you got to clean the dishes, somebody's got to set up the groover, somebody's got to set up the whatever. And having a chore chart is really, really helpful, especially if you're going with people that maybe have never done a river trip before. I do a chore chart even when I have experience come along. It always just makes things smoother. The last piece I'll say for trip leaders is really be conscientious about how the group's moving on the last day. You know, if you think about mountain climbers, the accidents always seem to happen on the descent. And the last day on a river trip is a day where people are kind of anxious, they're antsy, they're excited. And it's easy to kind of like maybe get ahead of the group or maybe not scout a rapid. And that's usually when people slip up. I think it's normal for people to feel that way, but maybe have a little pep talk on the last day. Say, hey, you know, I know we all want to get out of the water and go get a cheeseburger, but let's make sure that we do things by the book. Let's watch our spacing, scout our rapids, and follow the rules, just like it was a normal day on the water. Hey folks, I hope this is helpful. Please hit like and subscribe, and have a great time on the water. Take care.